In what should have been a simple, routine walk through South Commonwealth, Ohio, on Sunday, June 28, 2015, Navy veteran Suliman Abdul-Mutakallim went to an ATM withdrawing $60. He then stopped at a White Castle restaurant to pick up food for his wife and himself. A familiar, ordinary act. But as he walked home, he was ambushed by 3 young men. Men who, though greater in number, lacked the strength of character to face him directly. Instead, they shot him in the back of the neck. A man of honor, a man of kindness, Suliman, a veteran and a gentleman, collapsed on the pavement. The warm meal he carried spilled onto the cold concrete. As his life slipped away, his attackers rifled through his pockets, taking his wallet, his phone, his last $40 and the food meant for his wife. And then they ran. There was no trial, no arguments in court. 2 of the boys confessed. One of them, Javon Coulter, was just 16 years old. A child who made a choice that could never be undone. A single, reckless moment that became a lifetime of regret. And then something happened that defied all expectations of grief. Instead of hatred, there was an embrace. Instead of vengeance, there was mercy. Instead of seeing only the worst in the boy who pulled the trigger, there was a mother who dared to see the child he still was. A mother who chose to forgive. She wrapped her arms around the one who took her son's life. She held him. She held his mother as well. And in that moment, something changed. But let me ask you, if this were you, if Suliman were your son, your brother, your friend, what would you have done? Could you look into the face of the person who took your loved one away and see more than just a killer? Could you see the broken child beneath the crime? Could you look beyond the worst thing that they had ever done and believe they could be more than this? Could you forgive?
I don't hate you. I can't hate you. It's not our way. Showing rahmah, mercy, that is our way. And you were a baby, and you are still a child.
Audacious Rebel. Some people experience tragedy and are consumed by it. Others transform it into a force for change. Today, we have the honor of speaking with a woman who have done just that. Rukiye Abdul-Mutakallim. She is not just an advocate, not just a leader, but a mother who turned unimaginable loss into a mission to heal communities and end cycles of violence. Rukiye is the founder and CEO of the Musketeer Association, an organization dedicated to addressing trauma and empowering survivors. She has turned personal tragedy into advocacy, working tirelessly to reform policies on youth sentencing, gun violence, and community healing. Her voice has echoed across national platforms. She has shared her powerful story on A&E Court Cam, The Tamron Hall Show, Channel's 12 Liz Bonner's Show, and Cincy Lifestyle, where she has moved audiences with her unshakable belief in restoration and justice. Her impact extends beyond interviews and speaking engagements. Her words are immortalized in books like Single Tear, Loss, Survivor, Thrive, and Hear My Story Be My Voice. Through these works, she not only shares her journey but amplifies the voices of those who often go unheard, reminding us that healing is possible and justice is worth fighting for. It is my honor to welcome to the conversation a true warrior for justice, a woman whose strength and grace redefine advocacy. Rukiye Abdul-Mutakallim, welcome.
Sir Gunman, you make me nervous because what you say, I look in the man in the mirror, in this case, the woman in the mirror, and say, that's me. That's me, but it's not about me. And I never stood up to make it about me. We have a future.
Oh, yes.
But it's not us as the adults. It's our children and our ecosystem. We have lost our way.
You know, Rukiye, I've looked at all your videos. The first time I saw you and I heard your story, it brought tears to my eyes, and I'm certain that any human being with a heart, it would have had the same effect. I don't know how much people know your story, but we're going to get there. Right? I've spent many years in law enforcement and speaking with mothers who have lost their children to violence. I've noticed a recurring theme. Many of them describe an uneasy feeling, a deep, unshakable sense that something was wrong even before they consciously knew it. Almost as if there is an unseen, unbreakable connection between a mother and a child. Can you relate to this? You indicating having had a restless night prior to that phone call on Monday, June the 29th, 2015. So I want to go even before that day and that night, before you got that phone call at 1:30 a.m. What was going on with you as a mother?
Would you like to go back to 2 years when he moved purposely into that area?
Wonderful.
When you speak of mothers, you speak of that which inspires and excites and ignites hope. All mothers have to do that because we have to carry them for 9 to 11 months, these children. Oh, they induce you now. They don't let you go beyond 9 months. But that wasn't before. But these mothers, that connection with the child is not on our control, but it comes from that which created it all, seen and unseen. It's an innate law. And when we have our children, when they come into the world, that conception time that was spent, the 9 to 11 months, that's an unbreakable bond. It will never be severed, no matter what the mother may be doing that may not be right in their world. But it's there. And for the child, the same. When my son moved into an area to help, I was listening to one of your podcast that you were doing, you were hosting, and they were talking, this gentleman was talking about the natural laws.
Yes, Dr. Rahim.
He mentioned about this, that when you're in an area and you feel something, this is something a part of that in natural law.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are granted certain places that you were born in, if it wasn't a trying area, then you've been granted a really favor to have ease, because there are a lot of people that don't. So when that happens, you do have to look at, did you do this yourself? And if you're not the cause of it, then whoever helped that, you should be helping to help others not to have what you have or to not have the trouble that they have. So I've been listening to him say it. I didn't do it, put it in his words, but it reflects. And my son chose to move into that area to help the people. Very challenged area. Even when the sun shone there, or when it shines there, you still feel the hopelessness, the depression, the violence. You can feel it as it's coming across like a wave.
Right.
I pulled him aside the day he decided to move there, and I was like, okay, I'll come and help. And that day, there were some people helping him to move in. I pulled him aside because I didn't want to insult anyone. That's what you don't do.
Right.
You must be mindful. And I said to him, Suliman, how long do you plan to stay in this area? And with those kind eyes and that voice of gentleness, he says, Umi, which means mother.
Yes.
How better to help the people but to be among them, showing them how. You taught me that. Showing them that being poor just means poor. You're poor. You can still be kind. You can still give a smile. You can help each other. You can clean your own streets. How can I show them this but to be among them? Umi, you taught me this. I said, well, my son, I am here to be of help whenever I can for you. But I knew then, I'm telling you, I knew. I felt it. But I'm not the creator. I cannot condemn an area because of what I feel.
Right.
Every person in that area has a right to change. But I also knew the demographics that were laid out before the people were in that area was meant for that area never to rise to success. It wasn't. The way in which the laws have been made, the legislative laws, the way in which the demographics is laid out to where they don't have shopping centers there. They have little stop and goes filled with all types of drugs to incite them to do bad, not to do good, to think in a terrible way, to treat each other in ways that human beings were never meant to treat each other this way. It was never meant for us to be this way.
So you're saying the environment in itself was conducive to everything toxic, to everything negative.
But my son said, you taught me how. At that time, he was 37.
Right.
He had just come off, not just, but a few years out of the military from the Navy on a rescue ship in the Gulf because he refused to carry a gun. And he convinced, using his mother's words, he convinced the military to let him work on a rescue ship, then having him be carrying a gun in the Navy. And they let him. And he saved a lot of people there. in the first Gulf War. So he came here, saw the horror in this neighborhood where I live today, but it's not that neighborhood. I'm in another neighborhood not too far. He said, I want to live there. I want to help.
He decided to be a light in that darkness.
Yes. When we talked, you mentioned before that we started about the prophets.
Yes.
Our example of Jesus, Isa bin Maryam, Jesus, son of Mary, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi salam, all of them. We have all these prophets from Suliman to Isaiah, to all of them. Okay, they're all there. It's up to the people to study. But they all had the same persona.
Yes.
Help the people. Help the poor ones. Show them how that being poor just means being poor. You can do good for yourself and your family by being kind, by being clean, having good words coming out of your mouth. Helping when you see help. Not know your neighbor like know thy neighbor, but know of thy neighbor.
Yes.
You know when they need some help. You can see it. So why aren't you? When you have an elderly person struggling with bags to get into the house, you stand there and watch them and think, what? How can I rob them? Or I don't want to get involved? Or they're a nasty person. I'm not going to help them. When you could have taken the bags, set them, maybe they won't want you in the house. I get that. Set them on the porch for them so they don't have to travel as far. If they're getting off the bus, because many of them don't have cars, or they have cars, they're not working, and they're struggling with bags to get into the house, you can't help them.
You know, I don't want to cut you across, Rukiye, but, you know, I was having a discussion earlier this week with a colleague of mine. We were cops together. He listened to some of my shows. And he was saying, you know, what you're proposing, Gilman, is kind of hard to do because it takes so much. And I explained to him that sometimes it's just little things that makes magnanimous differences. And it's something because I always recall I had a neighbor, and he too was Muslim, Umar. And sometimes I would come home and my lawn is cut. I didn't tell Umar anything. He was cutting his and he just decided to cut mine. And sometimes I would see like some fruits on my wall. Where did that come? Yeah, Bernard, I left some fruits there for you. And that is years ago, but to this day,
you remember.
I would never forget it. And it's the little things, sometimes just little things, that makes really magnanimous differences.
It is the little things.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
We have allowed ourselves, again, sorry, your audience doesn't know, our life is not one-dimensional.
Correct.
Our life really is 5 dimensions, but we have allowed ourselves to be dumbed down. We must peel all of that away and remember. So the small things grow into big things.
Yes.
You don't get an oak tree from a tree. You get an oak tree from a little acorn.
Yes.
Yeah?
We were just speaking about that, right?
Yes. So when my family and I moved here in Cincinnati, it was a gradual. Everybody didn't come all at once, but we ended up here and finally bought a family home. Everyone was centering around how we're going to do this family home and grow vegetables to feed the neighbors. Not just us, but to feed the neighbors. Because I have 8 years organic farming, agricultural development, and animal husbandry. I've had that years ago. And you never forget it, by the way. You just don't. Because you always want to be healthy. But you have to know what that means. So anyway, the experiences and training I've had, plus a former police officer, you mentioned that. But at any rate, we moved to this neighborhood.
Right.
And I noticed on the block where I live, the people are pretty. They're pretty good. They got to keep their lawns very nice. But around the corner, going in different directions, they were not as pristine. I also noticed the majority of my neighbors are middle class. They have to work. I'm retired now. I'm doing natural disasters. My son is still with us. Had nothing. He hadn't moved into that neighborhood yet either. I had nothing in my mind other than helping for natural disasters. I'm retired. I've done my job as far as I'm concerned about my family, my neighbors, my community. And even before I had children, I was a rebel. We won't go to that right now. So, fighting for civil rights, everyone. Rebel, that is, I need to cause mayhem. No, we need to stop mayhem and justice.
An audacious rebel.
Yeah. I love your name, by the way. I was like, oh my gosh, that takes the heart, to take this word that people only see one-dimensional in it. There's much more to that word, but we're not going there either. You got me all excited now. So I noticed in my neighbors, I noticed some of them didn't get out of the house at all. Others were middle class, working. So I first started, like the one that you talked about, your neighbor. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I'm home. I'm cutting my lawn. I love taking care of the ecosystem. I love it. I love my flowers. We won garden awards and everything with my flowers. But I noticed that there are some people, they're working. They work from sun up to sundown. So I decided, okay, I'm going to cut grass where I see they aren't able to get there once a week. So I cut my grass every 4 days. I'm good, by the way. It looked pristine. And I noticed once a week. So I chose the houses I would go whenever I was cutting, but not every 4 days for them, every 4 days for me, but once a week for them. I cut the grass. I said nothing. I then moved to the other neighborhoods that weren't close by, and I found there were people who were housebound. They couldn't get out. They didn't have the money to pay for gardeners. I started cutting theirs. Next thing I know, within a year, I'm talking a year now, I just did it periodically. All my neighbors are noticing. They're being very kind. The next year, and it only took a year, neighborhood after neighborhood in that area, people started coming out and taking care of their yards.
Wonderful.
They literally started coming out, having conversations with me from time to time. But they started taking care of their yards. I didn't have to cut much anymore, except for the ones who were homebound.
Right.
And then their families started coming and cutting their grass and being more attentive to them. I didn't say a word, Gurman. I just said a prayer. Because our most powerful tool on earth is prayer. And the second most powerful tool are our words. And how we speak, what we say, or what we don't say. We can move mountains just from that small little acorn of care.
Yes.
So what you said to that man, you continue to repeat that, because they want to attack this as if they've got to throw a big blanket over it.
Yes.
No. The problem is they did throw a big blanket over it, and we're smothering ourselves. And we need to stop that. My son's light in that community, it took 2 years. He was changing things. When his time came where he was called to the grave, almost all the people in that neighborhood came to his funeral. He purposely didn't drive a car. He worked at one of the local factories. He would work all 3 shifts if they needed him.
Wow.
And little did I know until his time how much they had in just 3 months of him being with them had begun to look at him in a manner of management. They were going to move him up as if he never told them his life. He never told them what his family had. He walked the path of the simplest people in our history. He did. I was honored to have him as my son, and I still am honored to have him as my son. I just know his kindness. So almost all the people in this Myers Tools, what they're called, almost all the people on all 3 shifts came to his funeral also. He had a huge funeral. We didn't plan that. They came on their own. There were no notices set out. There wasn't. I was grieving my son. I am not going to call people to say, this is what's happening to me. This is what I don't do that. I call the Creator and ask him to make it easy for me to bear. This is my youngest, my last.
Tell us about that dreadful morning at 1:30 when you got that phone call from your daughter-in-law.
As if it was yesterday. We're still making the adjustments in the house. I remember that I didn't want to sleep, though I was tired. I'm very festickety about things I do. But I said, you need to go to sleep. Suliman is going to be with you soon. We're going to get out into the yard and look at where we're going to put the garden to grow the vegetables. Suliman's going to be with you soon. So I laid down. It was about 12 o'clock. My daughter had already gone to bed and her husband. They stayed in the upper tier and I was on the middle tier because we had a basement. You know, we've prayed 5 times a day. You know that.
Yes.
The prayers have been done. And then there is that early morning prayer. Maybe you do it an hour after you lay down, or maybe before you lay down, you might do another prayer. That's a volunteer. I did, but I didn't do it long. I said, I need to rest, but I couldn't rest. So I got back up. I did another smaller prayer to ease my mind, because my mind was racing and I couldn't understand why. I thought of Suliman again. I said a prayer, small little prayer. I laid down. It's almost like you're in a cryo sleep, and the phone rings, and I hear this sound, a sound that will forever echo in my heart. Suliman's been shot. The light is off. The room is dark. I sit straight up. And I said, say that again. Suliman has been shot. I said, where are you? we're at the apartment. I'm outside, and their police cars are all around. And I said, "Did you tell me one more time my son has been shot?" I'm coming. I hung up the phone, the cell phone. I opened the door to where my daughter is sleeping. And I yelled, "Your brother has been shot. We need to go. Get dressed. Let's go." And it's as if they really kind of knew themselves, because they didn't repeat it, and they didn't say, "Wait a minute." They didn't say anything. They're jumping in their clothes. It's like you kind of know.
Right.
Within 10 minutes, we're out the door. We're out the door. And he only stayed about 15 minutes from where we lived. But down a hill around the corner in a valley, a very desolate, hopeless valley. I could hear nothing other than, "Where is my son? Where is my son? Where is my son?" I saw the police lights. I saw the people outside. I can't see my son anywhere. I don't see the ambulance. Just the police lights. We finally find the detectives. I see his wife with the detectives. They're talking to me, and they're saying something, but I don't hear where my son is. I don't hear that. So finally, as my daughter is listening to them, I said, "Stop. All I want to know right now, where is my son? Can you tell me that?" "He's gone to the hospital, ma'am. They've taken him." "He's still alive? I need to be where my son is. Now. Tell me everything else later. I need to be with my son." And in the car, we went to the hospital, the only place, and I'm pretty sure it's almost in every community or state, city, where they have one place that handles gunshots and knifings. Only one hospital that does that.
Right.
Especially in our neighborhood. I don't care where you live. Think about it, people. So that's where he was. And that's the day that my son was called to the grave. But I got to say goodbye. So Grumman, I, unlike many of us, was granted the favor to say goodbye to my son. Though he could not speak. His sister was with him, and his brother, the oldest son, was at the Pentagon. We called him. He was at the Pentagon that particular night working on a particular project for the military. And we called him. And he got to say goodbye to his brother. There are so many that don't get to say goodbye. That is a favor from the Creator. This is what I'm talking about. We cannot look one-dimensional. We must look at all the different dimensions that are given to us and find the good there, because it's there. And I stayed with my son, holding his hand. I got to kiss the rags, the blood-soaked rags around his head, because that was my blood. My blood was there. I got to ask humbly the Creator, replace me with my son. Let me take his place if you don't mind. But he did not design it like that. I had no idea I would be doing any of this. This came a part of what needed to be said, the truth of what was going on in all these BBI communities, Black, Brown, and Indigenous, across the globe. It's not just here in America. It's wherever colonization has infected our people.
Oh, that's something else.
When I tell you I'm a rebel, you say I'm a rebel from way back? You don't know my life.
Listen.
None of you know my life.
I read that story. I read that story where you spoke about being with him as he was transitioning and how the tears flowed and how you experience a pain that most of us could not even begin to fathom. But then just 6 months later, you found yourself in court looking at the very ones responsible for his death.
Two of them anyway.
Instead of seeing monsters, you saw babies. You looked at their mothers and felt their pain. How do you compare those two states of being, grieving as a mother who lost a son, yet still seeing humanity in those who took him from you?
One of your interviewers was trying to tell, was expressing, not trying to tell, but expressing how we're connected. Have we forgotten where we come from? One single cell. One single one parent, mother, father. We came from that. We did. We're all connected. Innate laws, this is what people aren't being taught anymore. One of your guests spoke about natural laws. Well, they're more than natural laws. They're innate laws. Our ancestors way, way, way back, many moons, used to teach us about innate laws. They are the truth of how we are to live here on this earth in harmony with all of creation, because all are connected to each other. So if you prick your finger, have you ever cut your thumb?
Yes.
And you feel it go through your whole body? Doesn't it hurt the whole body? It doesn't just the thumb and you don't feel it here. You don't feel it here. You feel it. You're like, oh. And as long as it has not healed, you're still feeling it until it heals.
Yes.
And you are reminded, because it was something that wasn't purposely set on you. You're reminded how you did the cut. Where did it come from? How did it happen? You think about all of that. And you think about, what did I do? That's an innate law. Those are innate laws. You have to take a look at what happened. And you must be truthful, because inside of all human beings are 5 human values. And I say 5th dimension, we must stop thinking one-dimensional, get ourselves out of this box and see the world that we did not create, but we are receiving the rewards of this world, from food, water, from the sunlight to the rain, the snow. All of these are rewards on how we have the benefits, reap the benefits from it. Human beings are the caretakers, viceroys of this environment, because we are guests here. And so when we look at each other, we should see us as human beings, not monsters, not something that could be replaced just so easily, not something that we utilize for our own purpose and forget about how those actions may cause problems to them, or how we are making our living off of their misery. Because innate laws require us to take care of ourselves and the environment around us. Those innate laws require us to do that. So then you have to study, well, what are innate laws? When I saw those children, my education, not education, I've been educated, is to understand how children are born. How are they born? What are the gifts that are given to children, all children? And if you know these gifts, because you didn't put it in them,
Right.
and you didn't put the 5 human values in you, then you must look at what happened that caused them not to embrace those beautiful gifts they have. What are the gifts that a child, every child, whether they're blind, buck teeth, can't see, no arms, no legs, rock colored, checkerboard, doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter. What are the 5 gifts all children are given? Do you know?
No.
All children are born with light in their eyes, joy in their voice, hope in their hearts, a curious mind, and they're always reaching up. Every child is born that way. So if they come with this light in their eyes, they're not lying, stealing, cheating, hating. They're not born with weapons in their hands. They have only these gifts that are given to you as the parent for having them. They are the future of mankind, taking mankind beyond. What happened to them that they're no longer having this light in their eye? What happened to the joy in their voice when you hear a child laughing? Isn't that a beautiful laugh when you hear them just chuckling? They're chuckling, and you want to laugh because they're laughing, and you don't even know what they may be laughing at something really silly. You're like, but they are joyful. The hope. Even when you're treating them bad, they still are trying to find something good from you. And so they are smiling at you when you finally say, it's okay, honey, come let me hug you. And they let you, even after you have tortured them. And I know children that have been tortured.
Mm-hmm.
They try to please the person who's done the harm to them until they begin to realize that person has no good for them. That usually happens as they begin to grow from the age of 7 to 9, and they're starting to realize something's wrong here. And that's when they start taking on the characteristics of the environment they're in. So when I saw those children in that courtroom for the first time, my heart didn't say, what's wrong with those parents? What's the matter with that child? My heart immediately looked at them and said, they're babies.
Right.
They're not grown men that made some decisions, decided they are going to be horrible people. These are babies. And the 14-year-old had a 3rd grade reading level. I didn't know that at the time, but he was so scared. Scared, horrified. You could see it. You would have to lie to yourself not to see that.
That's Javon, right?
That's Javon.
Right.
And his cousin, who's the one that convinced him to come that night, do that crime, the horrible way they did it. It's what shook my bones. 16, hard in the face. You know, you're a former police officer.
Yes.
You've seen when people have been through some horrible things and they're older. You can see it in their face.
Yes.
How does a child get the face of a man that's 30 years old and he's 16?
Wow.
What does that come from? So yes, you have to ask the question. You can't think one-dimensional. You must. If we are, as we claim ourselves to be, human, then we must ask that question. What happened to those children? 2 years. That question continued to be here in my heart. I am type of person, a rebel, that I have to have the answer. I must find this answer. And as I began to lift up the curtain, I saw all the horrors, not of just Joe's children, but every one of the children that have died in these streets from whatever reason. The horror. And it wasn't just in the United States.
Correct.
And it's still going on because we are looking one-dimensional.
Yes.
We've got to stop.
I totally concur. But I think the biggest question is how?
Oh, it's like that little acorn. We keep looking at it as if we're not a part of the solution, but we're also part of the problem.
Yes.
When we're thinking one-dimensional, when we think that our answer comes from the very schools that have been making their living off the misery of the people. Is it in their interests to end this traumatization? Have they not made schools and hospitals and clinics and nonprofit organizations from the misery of these people? Have they not taught us that in order for us to be able to help to feed ourselves, we need to get that education? Like that? All things start in the home. It starts in the home. Where do we live? In here.
Yes.
If we are hurting ourselves, if we are doing the drugs, the alcohol. By the way, for me, when I hear say drugs, I always think alcohol. But I gather that I need to make a clear distinction. But if you study, you will know that is a drug. Alcoholism, just like gambling, is a drug.
Yes.
It's a harmful drug to you, to yourself, and to your families. But anyway, it starts here in the home, here in you. How have you been treating your body? When I found out that they were giving children alcohol, beer, and laughing, thought it was cute to see the baby walking around being drunk. Or to keep them quiet because they didn't want to hear them crying anymore. When a child only cries, a child now only cries when it's hungry, it needs cleaning, meaning it's wet, or it's being neglected. 3 things. If you are satisfied those 3 things, the child is laughing. The child is at comfort.
You said a lot. You spoke about the 17-year-old who looked as though he was
16.
He looked as though he was 30.
Yes.
You spoke about the environment and the toxicity that exists in the environment in which they live. And in reading some of your work, I noticed you identify trauma as a disease.
It is.
And through the Musketeer Association, you focus on healing trauma at a community level. How do you define trauma? And in your experience, what is the biggest misunderstanding people have about trauma and its connection to violence?
That it didn't have a connection to where our roots began. That's one of the things. You must look at where did the trauma happen first. Now for the BBI, Black, Brown, and Indigenous, and for your audience who's listening, please don't let those who believe themselves having the answer when It really, they know they don't. They know they don't. They're giving you clinical possibilities. And they call us or refer to us as BIPOC. Do you know what BIPOC means?
BIPOC, it's related to bipolar.
Although you will think there's something wrong with us, because they call us BIPOC. We're no longer Negroes, people of color, African Americans, Caribbean Africans. We are now called BIPOC, black, brown, black indigenous people of color, BIPOC, black indigenous people of color. I'm asked to sit on different boards because I have educated myself. And I come from a background of understanding about trauma and traumatization. And I sit on these boards, and when the first time they introduced me to this new title they're giving us across the globe, I asked them clearly, are you white? Well, that's what we're called. I said, no, you're not white, you're pink. I said, you're pink, of all different shades, but you're not white. This wall is white. You're not that. So how are you not people of color? Oh, we had thought about it like that. I said, what you're referring to people in the community that I come from, the community that I'm out working deeply in to try to help them look at themselves in a positive manner and care for themselves, love themselves and love each other, you've now called them a disease. They're not chicken pox. They're not smallpox, because that's how it sounds when you call them BIPOC. So you're not inspiring them to be better. You're making them feel like they're a disease. Oh, that's not what we mean. I said, then don't say that. They are BBI, Black, Brown, and Indigenous. And we are very proud of who we are. That's who we are. So if you want us to think better about ourselves, then you think better about us, because we're not a disease. So stop calling us BIPOC. And I've encouraged every Black, Brown, and Indigenous person, don't accept that title, no matter what they say. They are not in charge of you, but they are making their living off of you and your misery. So I'm still on these boards, and they have to take it this way. But this is how we have to start looking at what traumatized our communities. From when? Where did we learn this bad habits that we have? Because it was passed down generational to generational. They know that it's generational traumatization. Where did it start? What is it, in the 90s? No. Was it in the 80s? No. Was it, I'll go all the way past, I'll skip 70s. Was it in the 60s? No. 400 years in America. And I will take the Caribbeans right in with that, because they funneled a lot of what they were doing wrong through the Caribbeans into the Americas. And the type of slavery that they practiced was the worst slavery in history, in a man's history. How they treated human beings that they felt were far less superior than them. As a matter of fact, they considered them to be less than human.
Yes, non-human.
And that, before that, we didn't whip our children. We didn't even use the word whip. We didn't torture our own selves trying to make ourselves lighter. I love your color. I'm like, this man is chocolate. And I love his dark chocolate, meaning you. We were these people. Did we have wars among ourselves? Yes, we did, because humans, they're more than anything contentious. What is contentious? We're always arguing about something. Mm-hmm. Right? We're always having some debate about something. That's human beings. But were we cruel to each other like that? Overall, no. Never people like that. So when we look at our history in the root, you have to go to the root of the tree. You can't just look at the tree. Look into the root. And if the root is rotten, the tree will soon fall. But not in a minute. It takes generation of time because the tree is now grown. But did it grow well? Did it grow straight? Did it grow healthy? Look at the root, and it'll tell you. So I looked at the root of the children, and then I went beyond that because I had already fought for civil rights. I was born in servitude in this country. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. It's just one step above slavery, servitude. But I believe, Gurman, you do know that. Servitude is one step above slavery. And it's what we were taught, to hate our own color, to call ourselves the worst of names, to embrace a word that was never meant for a human being to be called, that N-word that we embrace now and try to make it something positive. That's like eating rat poisoning. Can you ever make rat poisoning safety for you? I don't care how sweet you make it and put it in a cake. Put it in pudding. It's going to rot you out from the inside.
Correct.
The more you eat it.
You know, Rukiye, you've worked closely on the fair sentencing of youth and even advocated for those who have committed violent crimes. How do we balance accountability with the opportunity for redemption, especially when dealing with young offenders?
Truth. There are 5 human values: truth, love, right action, nonviolence, and peace. Peace requires fighting for. First, inside yourself. If you're hating you, how are you peaceful? If you're hating what happened to you, how are you peaceful? You cannot embrace what happened to you and say it's okay and think that brings you peace. You must find the truth of what happened to you. What happened to your mother? What happened to your father? What happened to your sister or brother? What happened to your neighbor? These 5 human values are part of the innate laws we need to know. The Musketeer Association teaches about 25 innate laws. They're major. And all our programs and projects are built around those innate laws because they're truth. If we will not stand on truth, then we will be shackling ourselves. Truth sets you free. Whether it's for you or against you, it's the truth. Now, if what is found, that truth is against you, then change your ways. You can change. No one can keep you from improving your life but you.
Correct.
Coming from servitude, I can tell you that. I made sure by the way I decided to live my life that my children would never be born in servitude. And they weren't.
Right.
And my grandchildren are not born in servitude. I can be in a poor neighborhood. I have lived in poor neighborhoods. I never felt poor nor in servitude ever again. Once my mother got us out, we never returned. And we still were in neighborhoods close by. I never really wanted to be so apart from where I come from that I wasn't really wanting to help those next to me.
Right.
One of your interviewers was saying, move yourself out. If you have not changed what's in that heart, moving out of the neighborhood will not take you out of that bad neighborhood.
The neighborhood in you.
That neighborhood is in you.
Yes.
So you gotta change you.
So you take the pig out of the gutter, but the gutter is in the pig.
Right. So if you want that change to truly be truly be there, then you must change you.
Right.
If you're not standing on truth, and not truth as I see it, what kind of truth is that? Truth as you see it? No, truth is truth. Unabridge the meaning of the word truth, and you will see truth is truth. So if you are doing things that are not right action, what is right action? It's right view, right thought, right speech, right the way you look at each other. You had one of your interviewers that had an incident with one of the people he was mentoring, and someone stared at him. He kept staring at him.
Yes,
but
yes.
Instead of him,
He was ready to fight. He was ready to fight.
a positive thought about it, that right thought, he went straight to negative.
Yes.
Again, that neighborhood where he came from was still inside of him.
Yes.
Yet he's not living there anymore. He's making money. That money, by the way, is being made off the misery of those people because no one has stopped the horror that has been happening. No one has stopped that.
Yeah, because the thing it's deep seated. See, it's even more than psychological, as I would have mentioned in probably more than one of the interviews. How it's almost biological now because it has become ingrained, seem to be a part now of our whole DNA. You know?
Yeah, but it's not. That's the whole thing. The 5 human values you didn't put inside of you, and you can't take them out. They can be suppressed.
Right.
But if you stop. All you have to do is stop and ask yourself the question, have I been living truth?
Right.
Right? So here's the human trafficking. We're also doing human trafficking, by the way.
Yes.
And we're set out to shatter the third grade to prison pipeline. That didn't come about until, the 80s with Ronald Reagan and that policy. Third grade to prison pipeline. No, they didn't call it that then. Now they're very proud to call it then because they built the process for it to happen. But we sat back and we decided, we ourselves, individually and then in groups, that they're not talking about us. This is never going to happen to us. It'll be those people over there because I'm out. You're out? You're out of where? So, first and foremost is the truth. How have you been living your life? I brought in human trafficking because are the children the ones who are supplying the funds for human trafficking? Are they buying the magazines? Are they going to the porn shops? Are they going to the what do they call those places where they the strip bars? That's right, the strip bars. Are they buying? I'm going to say it. You may cut it out, and that's your choice. Victoria's Secrets. Oh, we are also happy to go and buy the lingerie. I have no problem against the lingerie. I'm a woman. Yes, I'm a woman. I have a problem that they are using the bodies not of older. They don't want 18 and over. And if they get the parents' signature saying that they can be the model, you look at that and you're like, oh. You mean to tell me you can't visualize that lingerie without a human body being right there? They're exposing themselves for your pleasure.
Yes.
And you're buying the magazine. Are the children buying those magazines? Or are we buying the magazines? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, we've got Penthouse, Playboy. Let's continue on down the line. Oh, wait, this is so innocent. We have the night out and it's wedding time and everybody's going to be the bachelor or the bachelorette. And we're going to where? And you didn't ask, is that really a child there? And if it's 18, how long has it been there? Because it's got a lot of good practice that it's doing around that pole. You think you learned that overnight? The child comes out knowing how to dance on a pole? Or is it taught? And they become really good at it from practice. How did it start? Our children are not getting kidnapped out off the highways. They're getting kidnapped in our neighborhoods. Parents are selling their children for their fix, whether it's alcohol. By the way, people can be sex addicts. They're selling that too. They're selling their children for their food, for their upkeep. They're selling their children because now the drug habit is there and they got to get a fix. How did that all come about? When you do the study, you find out in slavery, they used to take our families that they kidnapped, drug, and shackled. In order for them to make more children, they would drug them up, put them in cages, then put alcohol in them, and then put the women in with the buck and watch them have sex. You think I'm lying? I don't need to lie about the truth. If you think we have not been dumbed down so that we don't see that this became generational after generational after generational, then it's because we don't want to see it. Because then we have to look at ourselves. Are we sleeping with our own children?
You know, there's a surah that talk about good has become evil and the evil has become fair seeming, where it is so tainted now where you cannot decide or you don't know exactly where does evil end, because it's all like it's part of our society now.
In the Quran, if that's what you're referring to, a surah, you said surah.
Yes.
It says it's in one of the surahs, Surah 17 or Surah 7, that it is only the good that can come from good.
Yes.
Evil can never come from good. It can never. So when people stop wanting to do the good, then the only thing they are doing is the bad. So that's what it's referring to. If we stop thinking about doing the right action that is already put inside of us to know the right and wrong, you get that sense as you get older. Even the children, there are children who were born in families that were alcoholics from the time the child was conceived. And I mean conceived. The mother was drinking and smoking. Father, same thing. And if you think the father's semen doesn't affect the egg, I don't know what you're thinking about.
Yes.
Because both have to be clean. That child has to develop in a safe environment that's going to help it become the best it can be in development. But if you're putting in poison in, if you want good out, you got to put good in. So here we are faced now with families that continue to do the wrongful action. And then when the child comes out, we want the child to do the right action. But you didn't put good in there for the child to even develop that way. But, however, this child still has a chance. Why? Because those 5 human values are still in all of us. When the child begins to start thinking on its own, Some of these children rise above and get away from that environment. And you ask yourself, how? How did that child not become like their mother or their father? Because everyone must understand one thing. One thing. And that one thing is you can do right. You just have to think about it and want to do it. It's already inside of you.
Right.
Tap into it.
Right.
Resist the wrong thinking, the wrong action. Get away from that which affects your cognitive thinking here. You can't do alcohol. The cigarettes, I have 700 different chemicals in them. And you think because you only, do one cigarette a day, you're not affecting your body? Oh, I'm sorry. You may grow your own. No, you don't grow. Let's say that you acquire some of the, as the kids call it today, marijuana. They're talking to me, marijuana. And you believe, like the beer, they can't harm you that much. You can't do that. Number one, if you're buying it off the street, they already have laced it. Number two, if you're growing it yourself, what type of fertilizer are you growing it in? Because the ground requires good soil. And if you are not growing food in good soil, you're going to get poison. You think you're not? You think the plant won't grow? It will grow. It just won't be a healthy type of plant that you should be eating or drinking or consuming whatsoever. Right action is inside of you. Peace is inside of you to fight for it, to make sure that you are not being unpeaceful to yourself. Love. Love is not just sex. Matter of fact, that's the last thing about love. Love is caring for. If you look at this nail, how are you treating this nail? Do you think you just came about having it? That nail requires care. You think because you take it and put something else over it, that somehow you're helping that nail? We have a festation of fungus happening in our communities, from toenails to fingernails, that they're not telling you about. But you go about throwing something over a natural nail that needs love and care, and you're not loving, caring it, you're poisoning it. Wow. Stop doing that.
Okay,
those are the simple things.
You have gone. This is totally holistic, from human trafficking to the soil to the media. It's complete. You just, from A to Z, you have outlined. And I know we're just getting started, and we've been here for over an hour. We definitely got to do a part 2 to this. Your story is one of unimaginable pain, but also of extraordinary grace. You've shown us that healing is not about forgetting, but about transforming suffering into something greater than ourselves. Your journey.
I know I've gone on, and I don't mean to step on your line. I don't. People ask me why I forgave. And I say to them, one of the lines I say is, if you cannot forgive children, who can you forgive? They came into this world completely innocent, absolutely innocent, with gifts, with 5 beautiful gifts. What happened to them? And if you cannot show that rahmah, that mercy to them, what kind of people have you become? So, and I do tell them also, after I say that to them, forgiveness first starts with you.
Yes.
Have you forgiven yourself? Well, I didn't do anything. Stop. There's an innate law inside of you. The first thing, even when you stub your toe, what is the first thing you say?
Oh, God.
What did I do? They'll just say, what did I do?
Right.
You didn't put that in you. That answer, that question will always come. You cut your finger about that. You have to answer that question. So when people say, well, what did you do? I said, well, when I answered, I had to look at, what did I do? That question was there. What did I do? How did I get my son to stay in a neighborhood like that? What did I do? I told him the right thing to do. We must help each other. That is the right thing to do. We must be kind and gentle, and also be cautious, but never to be so negative that we won't help each other. What is that? So I told them, I looked at deeply, what did I do? And I have the answer. You know what I did?
What's that?
Because again, you must acknowledge the truth. And if you will not acknowledge the truth, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Right? So you know what I did? I didn't teach my son how to let go. When someone will not come, when you have shown them the way, you cannot drag them. You must let go. Walk away.
Right.
The ones who want that help will come to you.
Right.
Trust that, because you told them the truth. You walked that truth. You have spoken that truth. You lived that truth. I didn't teach any of my children how to let go while they were young. I was always out there fighting for what's right. But I didn't teach him how to let go.
You know.
And because I didn't, he stayed 2 years in an area. They didn't hear him. They didn't.
You know, your journey reminds us that justice isn't just about punishment, though. It's about understanding, about breaking cycles, about choosing to see humanity where others might not. But before we close, is there one message you would want to leave with those listening today? One lesson from your journey? What would it be?
Look at your history. Please look in the past. Stop letting yourself be educated and educate yourself. Find the history, because it will tell you where you come from. This is how we're changing the children today that the Musketeers are working with through the court system and getting them out of the court system. We're changing their mindset by a 180-degree turn. And we just started working with them the summer of 2024. And we've already graduated with honors. 17, 16, 12 years old, changing their whole mindset of how they were harming themselves and others. And they've stopped.
Wow.
They're tapping into those 5 beautiful human values. Some of them are becoming, they want to be narrators like you. They have voices, some of them so talented. Oh my goodness, so talented. Others are finding that history isn't as bad as they thought it was, because now they see their own history instead of the history that they were led to believe existed. You need to know your history. Yeah. That's what I want them to do. It will change their mindset. Educate yourself.
Thank you so very much, Rukiye, for your courage, your wisdom, and your relentless fight for a better world. And to everyone listening, may we all take a piece of this conversation and find ways to be part of the solution. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also in the description, you are going to find the website for Rukiye and the Musketeer Association and how you can assist. And until next time, stay aware, stay engaged, and most of all, stay audacious. Audacious Rebel.